This episode we'll be discussing breaking the lease.
I like to be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss.
Hi, I'm Hayley, and I don't know much about property management. Luckily, each month I get to sit down and learn with Elizabeth, owner of Parkstone property in Mackay, Queensland. We tackle topics relevant to renters, investors, landlords, and property managers, providing education, tips and tricks, and hopefully breaking down some stigmas along the way.
I wish I knew.
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. And you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Awesome.
It is my turn to pick out a icebreaker. For people who are listening to purely the audio, the reason that this section is silent is because I was just really focused on pulling out the thing from the cup and I did not talk at all. What's a personal challenge you overcame that made you stronger?
Life.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of potential to go very deep with this, but we don't have to.
No.
Obviously.
There's lots of things. It's hard though because like I don't look at things that I've gone through and they don't make my identity. So I don't dwell on it. It's like, yeah, that sucked, but I got through it. It's now behind me.
Yep.
I learnt a lot from that.
Yep.
And so then what I learned I can implement so I don't make that same scenario.
Well, if I can be controversial about it, I think that it's almost a little bit like kind of, I forgot the word. You're sort of turning yourself into a victim by saying that like, oh, this happened to me and it made me like this.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like I see it as like anytime that I've gotten stronger or I've improved on something, it's because I've gotten to a breaking point or because something happened, but then I still made that choice of like, I'm going to react to this in a way that improves me.
Yeah.
And like learn from it and choose different things.
So you go
despite that.
different
rather
mindset.
Than, so like it's slightly different. It's not like it's just, oh, I'm stronger because it happened, but like it's simplifying. I think it's oversimplifying. Like I'm stronger because I chose to be stronger because that thing that happened, I could have just like, just thrown my hands up in the air and not coped with it.
And you could have been a very
changed
different outcome and then you could be in a very different position in life as well.
Exactly. So so I'm stronger because I want to be.
Yeah. Look, I think because of what we go through, it changes our mindset. And I think we all may go through that period of victim mentality. I know, okay, so for me, one thing that I'm going through, it's a constant thing subconsciously.
Yeah.
But it also is something I can't change.
Yeah.
So I'm adopted. So I don't know my birth parents. I was raised by my Caucasian parents in a very loving home. Yeah. And clearly then I'm physically different to them. Yes. It's blatantly obvious that I haven't come from them. Yep. But does that, and throughout high school, primary school and high school, is legit one of two Asians in the school. Yep. So, stand out.
Yes.
Very obvious that I'm different. So there was a level of bullying and poking and prodding that went with that. Yep. Growing up in a small town in Tassie as well. Yep. Different mindsets down there too. But looking back on that childhood, that made me more of a comical person now because I laughed them off. Yep. Yes, they hurt, but I didn't want the bully to see that I was being hurt by what they were saying. Yep. I used to say back to them, come on, guys, you're picking on stuff that I can't physically change. Be smarter. Yep. If you want to really hurt me, say something that I can change or rather than my physical appearance. That's just lazy bullying.
Yeah, you're lazy.
Yeah, so that made, like, whilst I was going through that, horrible.
Yep.
Hated high school. Wanted to do high school and college flat out every day of the week so I could get it done in 6 months and then I could go on off and do something else for the rest of the 6 months of the year because I'm like, why are we dragging this out over a year? But so that made me a stronger person, but it also made me realise, okay, look, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because I'm Asian doesn't mean I'm exceptionally good at maths and science. No. I'm not going to be a doctor and I'm not a lawyer. No. But I did want to be a lawyer at one point. Could never be a doctor. But the stereotypes that are associated with that is a whole other conversation. That mindset too, though, in recent times I've gone through a lot of situations where I've had to realise I can't control what people think about me
Yep.
or what they say about me. So why spend any energy on that? But also let them do it, because it says more about their personality than it does about mine.
100%.
So silence is confidence. Loudness
Real.
is insecure.
Yep.
Hugely. So, but getting back to your question, just life in general for me,
Yeah.
it's not, and my life is not bad at all by
yeah,
any
yeah.
means, but it's not until I've been through, like it wasn't until Christmas and New Year last year
Yeah.
that I looked back on my year and everything that was thrown at me
Yep.
and how I just dealt with it and moved on to the next thing, because it's like, well, okay, I can wallow here in pity for the next 3 or 4 weeks,
Yep.
not get anywhere with it, but what use is that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very much a personality of get in, get it done, and get on with life.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily have a victim mentality, but or definitely don't. But
It's good.
you know, don't get me wrong. There's days when I just go, oh, this is terrible. This is shit. And
Yeah, no, look, I think you're allowed to like acknowledge that something hurts without creating your entire, like just sitting it and
Yeah.
accepting your fate
Yeah.
sort of thing. There's, you can say, yeah, this sucks, this hurts. I'm going to do what I need to do to cope, which might
Yes.
be having a bad day.
yeah,
You know, that's different to making your whole personality and your whole
that's
life
right. Or
defined
poor
by
me,
that.
poor me, or blaming others for what's gone on in your
Yeah.
life when they've got nothing to do with it. It all comes down to how you've reacted to that situation.
Yes.
Because you're in charge of your own emotions and your reactions to things.
Yeah.
If you give it energy, it's going to grow and morph into this massive problem.
It will.
So, yeah, it's not until I reflect back and go, okay, I was just in full mode of getting in, getting it done, moving on to the next thing. But it's important to sit in those emotions too sometimes so you can
To
process
feel
it.
them, I think, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other,
Otherwise, yeah, you
a
end
whole
up
other conversation.
watching a puppy video on TV and an ad, and that makes you cry.
But that's okay.
But yes, that's okay.
That's okay. You know?
But
That's
yeah, so
all
there's
right.
for me, there's no actual specific event in life.
Yeah, just so many little things, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So, breaking the lease.
Yes.
That could be one of those events in someone's life.
Yes,
right?
it can be. Yeah,
It can.
You tend not to break a lease unless you have to. Something
No.
may have changed, or you just simply don't like the property anymore and you get a better deal somewhere else.
Yeah,
But there are consequences to breaking the lease.
for sure.
Yeah.
And you had something written down, like a word or a word on the street for
Yeah,
us to
so,
relate to that. What was that?
So in terms of what we're seeing a lot in Mackay at the moment is multiple people applying, like a group applying for houses. They're a little bit more expensive because across the board all of them can afford it a little bit more in
Yep.
each contribution.
Yeah.
So we're seeing it's tending to go towards more people grouping together because they can't afford where they're living. Like
Yep.
they might be in a 1-bedroom apartment or unit and it's suddenly not worth, it's no longer $280 a week. It is now looking at $410 a week. And on one person's income, it's just may not be affordable for them.
No.
So they're looking to go into share arrangements, but a legal share arrangement of everybody's on the lease, everybody contributes to the bond, everybody is 100% a tenant and responsible for the property. So then it's not just people, it's not a share house then essentially. You've not got people coming in, staying 2 weeks and then going again. It's not a furnished property, you're bringing your own stuff in.
Yeah.
Like you're living as a little mini family
Yeah.
under one roof, but they might be friends. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
brothers and sisters or
Yeah.
a mum and dad and kids. It might be more co-workers, so they all work on different swings. So you've got 2 people there at one time and the other 2 are at work and vice versa. So we're noticing that a lot more because people aren't able to afford necessarily where they are currently, or financial circumstances change and they have to break their lease because they can no longer afford it or for whatever reason.
There you go.
Yeah. So in terms of breaking lease, it's not something that we recommend if you don't
can
have
help
to.
it,
If you
yeah.
can help it, try and stick out your fixed term agreement. But breaking the lease basically means a tenant has decided they don't want to be there anymore and they give 2 weeks notice.
Yeah.
So
Before the planned end of your actual
Yeah, correct.
lease.
Before
Yeah.
the fixed term agreement expires.
Yeah.
So you might be 6 months into a 12-month lease, and you for whatever reason, it might be job relocation,
Yep.
might be something's changed financially, and you have to break the lease. So then, if you're breaking the lease as a tenant, there are costs associated with that.
Yeah.
We had a tenancy legislation change September last year that changed the way that we formulate how much you pay as a tenant if you break your lease. Old school times, it used to be a week's rent plus GST, which is the letting fee that the owner would normally pay.
Yes.
Then there would be advertising to advertise the property on realestate.com or whatever media the real estate advertisers on. You'd have to cover that cost because the owner is not breaking the agreement.
No,
you are as the tenant.
Yep.
And then you still have to pay rent until a new tenant is secured. Now, the agency is responsible to mitigate your loss or assist to mitigate your loss, which basically means as soon as you give your notice, they've got to put it on the internet and try and make that gap from when you move out to when a new tenant moves in, make that quite small. So you're not paying weeks and weeks and weeks of rent and the house is vacant and no rent is coming in from a new tenant.
Yeah.
So they've got to try and mitigate the loss for the owner and for you as the tenant.
Makes sense.
So that used to be the old method. Now with legislation changes, and it does depend on when your lease was signed
Okay.
to whether this new system comes into play. Nothing has been tested. There's no precedent in QCAT to determine this new formula when the new formula comes in or when the old formula is still used.
So that's not really standardised.
Not as yet. It's never been tested in QCAT, so we can't determine because it's a new law.
Yeah.
It only came in 30 September last year, so it's really hard to gauge. But how I look at it as 30th of September, new legislation change. So any leases signed after that go under the new legislation.
Yeah.
Anything signed prior to that, which may start coming up for renewal now, anything prior to the 30th of September is on the old school system of those extra costs. Now, since the change in legislation, 30th of September, if you break your lease now, you have to you pay a percentage, a pro rata amount of 4 weeks of rent. The maximum you're going to pay is 4 weeks of rent. There is no letting fee. There is no advertising fee.
Right.
You're essentially ending the agreement with the owner by way of compensation and mutually ending it. So then, controversial opinion, and it's something I'm going to talk to Stacey Holt when I go to her training next month about these new legislation, your laws. Then does that then mean when a new tenant moves into that property after the old tenant's moved out, it's a whole brand new agreement, still has to fall under the same rent depending on when it was last increased, but then that's a whole new agreement. It's not, we don't have to advertise it then as a break lease because it's not technically breaking the lease anymore.
Right.
So break leases will potentially become
null and void.
Yeah, you won't have to. So at the moment, we see a lot of people advertising as break lease because the tenant is moving out mid fixed term.
Yeah,
and they may write in their bio in the blurbs about the property. This property's rent is currently $520, but it will be increasing as of might be the 8th of June. It's going to go up $120.
Yeah.
To meet with market rent because that's when we can increase it again because the old fixed term has ended.
Yeah.
So there won't necessarily be that advertising.
No.
But so with the pro rata cost, it's a maximum of 4 weeks rent, depending how long you've got left on the lease. So simple terms, and this is how I interpret it. It may be interpreted differently by other property managers, but how I look at it as if you're 6 months into your lease, you've got 6 months left, you pay 2 weeks as compensation to the owner to vacate early because it's pro rata.
Right.
There is an equation on the RTA website that you can use to work that out 100%.
Right.
But as a rough estimate, that's how I would interpret it.
It's calculated based on how much you have left, basically.
If you move in and you've only been in there a month, the most you're going to pay is 4 weeks rent as compensation.
That would put a lot of pressure then on you as a property manager to find a new tenant, like more pressure perhaps because then the tenant's not responsible for that rent anymore. So there's a much greater risk for loss.
The sense of urgency is there, but it's no different from in the old school times when we had the sense of urgency to mitigate the tenant's loss.
That's true.
We still have an obligation. And really, it doesn't, for me, when it was a break lease or whether it's somebody compensating and, we always want to minimise the owner's period of time with no rent.
Yeah.
Because when they're not getting rent, we're not getting management fees. So we're not getting paid.
Yeah.
In theory. So there should always be a sense of urgency with any application, whether it's a brand new property that's just settled and investors have bought it, to whether a tenant is moving out early because for some reason they have to end their agreement early. So I think there's a whole change in terminology required around that change of legislation. Same like a lease renewal, things like that. It's not necessarily a lease renewal anymore. And we've covered that in one of our other podcast episodes. So in terms of breaking lease though, right now, if you have to move out and you've got, say, 3 months left on your lease, you are paying a pro rata amount of what's left. So it's no longer necessarily, depending on the circumstances, depending when you signed your lease, for example, it's no longer a week's rent plus GST of letting fee. It's no longer an advertising fee. It's no longer paying rent on the property when you're not there because no one's moved in. So it does eliminate the risk of paying double rent.
Right.
Because if you have to move out of that house, let's say you've got a job relocation, for example, you're going to have to find a house in this other state where you're going or wherever you're going. It is a risk for that new owner of another house to take you on because you're paying their rent plus that old rent because you had to break lease.
Exactly.
So this new format and this formula takes that away.
So definitely something introduced sort of in as a supporting tenants type.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. But then, there are a lot of tenants that may have abused that breaking the lease and, we have to move because of such and such. But do you really? Or are you just trying to get out of the house because you don't like it anymore?
Yeah, right.
But the cost is still tenant associated and helping tenants out, that if they do have to leave for some reason, it's no longer a massive financial burden because they're the ones that carry that risk to try and find another property.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they would have had to have paid double rent.
Yeah.
Which if another agent is not as progressive or the sense of urgency is not there with what their sense of urgency is not there to mitigate the tenant's loss, that they're not worried. They're still getting rent because the old tenant's still paying it. Whereas, there's been some cases where tenants, over the Christmas New Year period, nothing could happen because the agency's closed.
Yeah.
That's like, well, that's not the tenant's fault.
No.
So they still have to pay rent though.
Yeah, that's not very fair.
No, it's not. So, break leases, I think there needs to be a massive change in terminology and there's got to be more education around that because I saw one just the other day. That is a break lease of the old school mentality. Yeah. Now, I don't know when his lease was renewed. It may have still fallen under the old times, but I feel like there are a lot of agencies that are not fully understanding what that legislation change was. And they're just going, we don't know how to do that, so we're just going to do this old school. So then, unfortunately, the tenant gets lumped with that.
Yeah, they just kind of have to.
Yeah, because that's what their real estate has told them to pay. It makes it really difficult when...
Could they take that to QCAT?
They could. The best place to go first is go to the RTA.
Oh, right, yeah, true.
And have a chat to them.
Yeah.
You can just ring them on their 1300 number and have a chat to them.
Yeah.
But just be careful. What information you do give them will depend on what they tell you. So if you rang them 3 times and gave them 3 different stories, but the basis was the same, they may not give you the same answers.
Right.
Because it depends on the caller. It depends what you tell them.
Yeah.
And more often than not, sometimes if there is a situation where the tenant's actually in the wrong, they won't tell the RTA person that they talk to that they've actually done anything wrong. It will be that blaming of the owner did this, the owner did that. Yeah. And the RTA person has only got the information that they're given to give any advice on or say this is what the legislation states. They will never be able to tell you need to do this, this and this. We suggest, or the legislation allows you to do this. Or you could do this, or you could do this. Yeah. Best off to talk to your property manager. Yeah. If you haven't got a good relationship with your property manager, then it does make it very difficult. Lawyers aren't going to help you because they don't really deal with residential tenancy law, or it's going to cost you. So talking to a lawyer, they can't actually represent you in QCAT anyway. Oh, okay. That's only, you can't take them along as your representation because, unless they are only doing tenancy law. But also talk to tenancy advocacy services. They may be able to help you. Yeah. Because, I don't know that one that I saw the other day is actually correct. Right. It should have been a pro rata to end the agreement early.
Honestly, I think the pro rata thing makes sense in my brain because I love a good, flat payment. Yep. That just covers it. Yeah. All of the extra stuff just it stresses me out not because it could be extra. Like, it's fine if the flat payment was extra. It's that it's all random and all at different times.
Yes.
And as a tenant, the way I do my money, that stresses me out. So I guess personally, I'd prefer that legislation. Just because it's simple.
I mean, the owner's still getting compensation. I mean, just thinking of it then, the owner, unfortunately, if you move and you've only been in there 2 months and then suddenly you're out, you've got, 10 months left on your lease if it's a 12-month agreement. The owner may look at it and go, well, now I have to go through that whole process again. But that compensation eliminates those costs because you're still going to get a tenant. This may change if the market was the opposite way. If there were more houses than tenants, that may be where this whole pro rata is not enough. 4 weeks 4 weeks maximum compensation may not be enough for somebody who has got 10 months left on a lease. They have to reduce the rate of rent because they can't find a tenant to move in at that higher rent or what the market was, say, before. And then 4 weeks is just not enough because the cost of putting a property on the internet is, depending on your location, it might be $140 only, but then, there's the time that goes into that and then the letting fee. So with that pro rata amount, you don't pay any of the advertising costs when you're breaking the lease as a tenant anymore. No. So that's the owner that has to pay that. So then you've got the compensation there to cover that, but if it's only, you can understand if it's only half, like if you've got 3 months left and it's really only a week and a half pro rata that it's going to be, that could possibly work. But it's one of those tough ones. I think it just does vary. Yeah. To sum up, breaking the lease, in my personal opinion, is something that's going to become obsolete because with this pro rata formula, if we class that as a mutual end to an agreement, it's not technically them breaking the lease. The terminology does not match the action. So, but it's what we've got to deal with at the moment. A lot of agencies are still calling it a break lease. I mean, a lot of agencies are still calling owners landlords, which is very, very old and obsolete. I don't call them landlords. I call them owners because that's what they are. They own the property. And in turn, sometimes calling them an investor because that's what they actually are doing. Investing.
Yeah, well, that's true. A lot of hate speech online also calls them landlords.
Yes.
That's like a stigma word now.
Which only then aids their narrative of hatred against people that are investing. But without the investors, you wouldn't have any properties to live in. Yeah. So
unless it was all government housing.
Yeah, which is a completely different ballgame on its own again.
Because we can't all buy property.
No, we can't.
The wages just aren't there.
That's, exactly right. So, but in terms of breaking lease, then, that's what the formula is now. Right. We will see more as time goes on. We will see more cases in QCAT, which will then help determine how it actually works. And then if there's any changes to legislation, because if it's not working or if there's if there's uproar from owners that this isn't enough, we'll just have to watch this space and see how it all plays out. But basically, what we've got right now is we've got that formula, and the old school really will be coming to an end where you can't use it. Yeah. And hopefully tenants become more aware of what their rights are. So if you've got a real estate agency that's still using the old school, check if it's supposed to actually be charged. Yep. Be responsible for yourself because if you don't have to pay extra rent, that's going to save you so much money.
Yeah. And still coming back to being a responsible tenant though, like still try and avoid breaking the lease. Yeah. If you can, like you really should only be doing that if something out of your control is happening to your living situation and
that's right.
It just has to happen. Yeah. But otherwise, don't go trying to do it just because you feel like it. Yeah. It puts you in a really precarious position regardless of whether or not this new legislation benefits you because it is still a rough market out there and it also doesn't set you up with a very good reputation. No. With your future application, if you don't have a particularly good reason for why you had to break the lease. That's right, yeah. It kind of just looks like you just didn't want to do it, So that would be my advice. Still don't do it. Stability is a good ideal. Yeah. We like stability. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of Parkstone at Home. I've been Hayley.
I've been Elizabeth.
And if you want to hear much more of our voices, you can find this podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also find us on all of our socials at Parkstone Property for shorts from these videos and just updates from Parkstone Properties business. Thanks, we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast was recorded on Gubby Gubby land in Moreton Bay. Parkstone Property is operated on Yui land in Mackay. We pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging and acknowledge their continuing connection and custodianship of the land where we live, work and share ideas.
I wish I knew